J20. Occupy Wall Street West. This is where Fortress is at One Market.
What time is it? Time to
occupy!
That was Sarah Short.
Park Merced is San Francisco's biggest apartment rental complex. It's not owned by Leona Helmsley anymore. Now it's owned by Fortress Investments. On Market Street, Fortress Investments. Fortress came in and bought Park Merced real recently under a scheme we call predatory equity. What that means is big old greedy corporations come in from out of town, they gobble up as much property as they can, they try to get as many of the long-term tenants out, raise the rents, make a buck, make millions and millions of dollars. This is how they become the 1%. That's what happens to Park Merced. Meanwhile, there's 6,000 approximately renters living there. Fortress Investments is going to demolish 1,500 rent-controlled units in San Francisco. Just as the plan got approved to demolish those units and rebuild the complex, low-income renters started receiving notices of eviction. Shame!
Fortress, Fortress, you're no good! Don't destroy our neighborhood!
Save our home! Save our home! Save our home!
The CEO of Fortress is Daniel Mudd. He got indicted for corruption when he was CEO of Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, biggest taxpayer rescue in the history of the global financial meltdown, the national financial meltdown. $250 billion of taxpayer money went down the drain due to Daniel Mudd. So this is the guy the city is trusting to keep his promises to keep rent control and the biggest collection of affordable housing and rent control in this city. What do you think they're going to do? Are they going to keep it, or are they going to maximize their profits by getting rid of it? Our legal advisors have shown that what they've done in the past and what they will no doubt do again is betray all their promises in the developer contract they've signed, go to court, and get rid of rent control. That's how they're going to make their money. So please help save this very beautiful and important part of San Francisco. It can be called a piece of suburbia that doesn't belong in the city. We're really great. Save Park Merced!
We're just at Fannie Mae earlier today because Fannie Mae owns 40% of the mortgages that are being foreclosed on. Daniel Mudd is the CEO of Fortress. Fortress is the investment company that is financing the eviction and destruction of 15,000 rent-controlled units in San Francisco. So Fannie Mae and Daniel Mudd, Fortress, this conglomeration of 1%ers have been displacing, have been evicting, have been pushing out working class San Franciscans for a while now. And they're poised to evict even more. I'm a tenant counselor in San Francisco. I see the housing needs. I see how many people come into our office because they're being evicted, because they can no longer afford their apartment, because it costs, on average, $25,000 to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in the Mission. Who can pay $25,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment?
Nobody!
And if we get rid of 15,000 rent-controlled units in San Francisco, how many more people are going to have to leave the city that they've been in their whole lives? San Francisco is a working-class town that is being taken advantage of by the 1%. Our affordable housing, our rent-controlled units are being LSAP'd, they're being demolished, they're being converted into high-rises and housing for the 1%. Daniel Mudd was the former CEO of Fortress Investments. He made all this happen. The demolitions, the evictions.
Wall Street hedge fund controlled by Lehman Brothers and Goldman Sachs is destroying 1,500 rent-controlled apartments in San Francisco, evicting tenants at Park Merced. It's what we call predatory equity, where banks and investment companies buy up apartment buildings, kicking out all of the tenants, destroying rent-controlled units, replacing rent-controlled tenants with market rent-paying tenants, and replacing affordable rent-controlled housing with luxury rental housing for the 1%.
I'm going to have Deepa Barma come in from the Eviction Defense Collaborative. They're also on the front lines, and they're the ones when these tenants get those notices and it gets up and winds up in court and they have to fight it. They're there representing them with attorneys. Why do we care about housing?
Because we live in it.
We live in it. Because we need it. It's got one of the biggest problems with homelessness in the country.
Yeah.
There are pressures against every long-term tenant in the city to get them out because the amount of money that can be made off their apartment is astronomical. And when you see a housing development the size of Park Merced at risk, it's bad for all of us.
Yeah.
It's bad for our city. It's bad for the ability for people to continue living here in the communities. What we're seeing right now at the Eviction Defense Collaborative is higher and higher numbers of evictions. We are seeing record numbers of family homelessness. The wait list for shelters is 6 months long. I see families, students, single people coming in from Park Merced saying, I got this notice, I have no idea what's going on. I tried to pay, and now I'm being told I have a year's worth of utilities I had no idea I owned. I tried to pay and the electronic system rejected me, and now I'm getting a notice for thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. So what we're seeing is a systematic plan to get people out in order to make money, and we have to fight it. Yeah. Because without that, we don't have our city anymore. We have to hold our city.
Ted Gullickson.
We have a demand letter here that we have delivered to Stella Management, and I want to ask Keith to come on up and read some parts of it.
This afternoon, our demand letter was taken up to the 42nd floor to Fortress Investments. What we want them to do is stop the demolition of rent-controlled housing immediately. Yeah. We call on Fortress to call a press conference to publicly announce that no demolitions will occur, and that Fortress submit any necessary documents to the City of San Francisco so that any permission allowing the demolitions is revoked. And number two, we want to impose a moratorium on all no-fault evictions at Park Merced. No-fault evictions, so-called no-fault evictions. That's no fault of the tenant. The tenant's paying rent. They're doing everything they're supposed to do, and they get evicted anyway. We want a moratorium on all no-fault evictions at Park Merced. We call on Fortress to announce at that press conference that in addition to ending all demolitions, that Park Merced will not evict any renters anymore for this so-called no-fault eviction reason.